Good morning, everybody. You are very welcome. My name's Lorraine Atchison. I'm Managing Director of Women in Business, and this morning we are talking about the M word. So we're just going to give it a couple of seconds while people join the Zoom room. So hopefully you can see all of us, and hopefully you've got a glass of water, a cup of tea, whatever you need to settle in for the next hour, which I know is going to be an incredible, thought-provoking, insightful discussion. We are having a general chat and Q&A, but I really want an opportunity for you to ask the burning questions that you have. So there is a chat function on Zoom. If you look at the bottom of your screen, there's a little speech bubble that says chat. So put any questions you have into the chat throughout the session, and I'll be keeping an eye on that. So as I said, I'm Lorraine Atchison. I'm Managing Director of Women in Business, and we're really delighted this morning to be talking about the menopause and perimenopause. So I'm going to start off by getting our fantastic panel to introduce themselves, just to share a little bit about themselves and their particular interest in this topic. And I'm going to start by asking Dr. Andrea Latimer. You're very welcome, Andrea.
Thanks, Lorraine. Good morning, everybody. So I work as a GP. My background's in primary care, and I also work as a women's health and menopause specialist, and as an occupational health doctor. I have a portfolio role, so I see women in those three different clinical settings. I'm based in County Fermanagh, but I do work across Northern Ireland, and I've been working in the NHS and primary care for about 20 years. And I suppose during that time, I've gained a good understanding about the wide variety of health issues that can affect women throughout their reproductive lifespan, but also, a particular interest in menopause. And I'm really passionate about helping women understand what's happening to their bodies, to look after their health and to stay healthy as they get older. And I suppose for myself personally, I'm a woman in my 40s. I start to notice the odd wee symptom creeping in, and I'm really keen to know what I can do to look after my own health and stay in good health going forwards. So it's lovely to join you all this morning. Thanks.
Thanks, Andrea. And it's great to hear both the professional, but also that personal insight there. We are planning to record this Zoom today, so people can watch and catch up. And I am just going to double check that this is recording.
Yeah, we are recording, Lorraine.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And Loretta, you are very welcome. You're in the Republic of Ireland this morning. Tell everyone about yourself.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. And it's great to have the spotlight shed on menopause and perimenopause. I am the founder and the CEO of the Menopause Hub and Menopause Hub Academy. And really, what that all is that we offer resources to help women. In 2018, I opened Ireland's first dedicated menopause clinic, and it was one of two in the world. There was another one opened in the UK at the same time. And I set it up born out of my own experience of going through menopause. I worked for about 25 years in the corporate sector, working with big multinationals internationally and in Ireland. And at 49, menopause hit me. And to be honest with you, I'd never heard the word perimenopause. So as a result, all the symptoms that impacted me during perimenopause, I never realized were connected. Sorry, now I get a tickle in my throat.
That's all right. It's always typical when we're on these things.
How weird. And it was my own journey that prompted me to set up the menopause clinic. And now we have 3 clinics in the south of Ireland. We offer, you don't need a referral. You can just make an appointment directly. We do virtual consultations and we do in person. So we have 2 in Dublin and 1 in Cork. And to be honest with you, when menopause hit me, at 49, my period stopped. And then I soon got hot flushes. And they were the only 2 things I knew about menopause. And I would have considered myself to be reasonably intelligent, reasonably well educated, kind of woman of the world. And I was really just blindsided by this experience, which was, and to be honest with you, I was kind of outraged. And I was outraged because I'd gone through life as a woman, obviously, and as a working mother outside the home, and all the various different things, childbirth, periods, pregnancy, childminding, all those different things. And then I thought, wow, here I am, 49, going through menopause. It should be kind of plain sailing, and I should be able to move into kind of, the peak of my career. And Instead, I was hit with a tsunami of symptoms, which actually resulted in me having 7 to 10 years of suboptimal health. And it was really that. And I thought, wow, we get to this age and we know nothing. It's taboo, it's secret. So that prompted me to say, I want to do something about this, and hence setting up the clinic. We also work with organizations to help them become menopause friendly by introducing policy, training, and that kind of thing. And so that's what I do. I gave up my job in the corporate sector, and now I'm full-time in the area of menopause. And really, it's so rewarding because I think the benefits that women get from information, education, fact-based information to help them make decisions is very empowering. And I think we deserve that.
We
So
do indeed, Loretta. Thank you. And that's exactly why we're here today, to empower all the people on this call and all women everywhere indeed. Denise, tell us a bit about yourself. You're very welcome this morning.
Thanks, Lorraine. Hi, everyone. My name is Denise Black, and I'm the director of the Centre of Learning, which is a sister organisation of Women in Business. I've been working, and this disturbs me, for 37 years, and suppose 30 years of those in the private sector, and then 5 in the public in the last 18 months now in not-for-profit. And they've all been in HR roles. So my professional career has always been in that sort of caring for staff, whether it be their professional development or their personal development. And it's been so interesting in that time frame to see how topics have come to the table that weren't there before. Menopause would never have been on the HR table. Really only it has come in the last 10 years. So that's a sort of quick professional background. Personally, yes, as a woman in her mid-50s, I am in the delightful throes of menopause still, so I can give you the live feedback on it. And I'm really looking forward to talking about it honestly today, and hoping that any questions we can answer between all 3 of us. So looking forward to it. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Denise. Okay, well, to get us started, I thought we would really just get that understanding, and so we're all on the same page about exactly what perimenopause and menopause means and what's happening to our bodies. So Andrea, could you tell us a bit more about that, and also when women can expect to usually start that phase of life?
Yeah, so I suppose menopause is talked about an awful lot, certainly, and the terms, perimenopause and menopause are used sort of interchangeably sometimes in social media. But I suppose for the purposes of this, when we talk about menopause, we're talking about that whole range of symptoms that can start during perimenopause and continue on. I suppose menopause, the definition of it is that it's a point in time and that it's 1 year after the last menstrual period. Typically, it happens between the ages of 45 and 55, and on average around 51, 52, but there can certainly be variation in that. Perimenopause then means that time around the menopause, and it's really when the natural monthly cycle that started at puberty and continued on throughout the reproductive life, it begins to change, and hormone levels begin to change. And overall, there's a natural decline in hormone levels towards menopause. And with that, it can give rise to a variety of symptoms.
Brilliant, thank you. That's a really nice definition, because I do think we use those changes, and even the term perimenopause feels like it's new on the scene. Menopause has maybe been more widely used, but menopause actually is just one point in time, as you've described.
One point in time. And I suppose, Lorraine, what we've realised as well is that perimenopause can start much younger than typically women would expect menopause to be at. So often it can begin sort of late 30s, early 40s.
Wow.
And women's experience of that will be very variable. Some women won't have any symptoms at all. Probably about 1 in 5 women have very little symptoms. But those women that are symptomatic, those symptoms can range from mild to very severe. Then there will be women, I suppose, that go through an earlier menopause, and I think it's important to highlight those groups. So if menopause happens between 40 and 45, we refer to that as early menopause. And if menopause happens before 40, that's premature menopause.
Okay.
And indeed, I suppose in that group, you'll have women who maybe have an underlying medical disorder where they've never actually started to have periods, for example, some genetic disorders. Or you may have women who spontaneously, for whatever reason, that their periods have stopped. Or you could have women who've undergone surgical or medical treatments, for example, maybe surgery for endometriosis to remove ovaries, or perhaps they've had cancer and have been treated with chemotherapy or drugs to suppress the ovaries. Those women can go through, premature menopause. And I think that's a really, really important group to consider, because there's a whole raft of, emotional, psychological, health symptoms that come with that. And really those women need some specialist support and care.
Yeah, I'd say so. Thank you for that, Andrea. Loretta, obviously you're running three clinics across Ireland. What are the symptoms that you're hearing women experience about who are coming to your clinics? And what's typical, but perhaps what are the raft of symptoms, so the audience today can hear about the different experiences?
Well, as I said earlier, I thought it was only no periods and hot flushes, but actually there are
Yeah.
over 40 symptoms of menopause. And we use a symptom checker with the patients that come to the clinic. Now, bear in mind, I'm not a doctor, but we do have 14 doctors. We have a psychologist, women's health physiotherapists, and a dietitian and nutritionist, because we want to offer evidence-based treatment that covers a range of different things that women can experience. And the other thing is that no two women are the same. So no two women's menopause and perimenopause is the same. And so when we look at the symptoms, we kind of divide them up into three key areas. One is mental, emotional, psychological symptoms. Then the other is sort of physical or physiological symptoms. And then there's what we call genitourinary. So it affects the sort of the genital area, the bladder, the pelvic area. And so they're three big kind of buckets of symptoms, if you like. And what women often tell us, and particularly in perimenopause, the ones that can affect them are things like anxiety, anger, sleep issues, insomnia. They may find it difficult falling asleep, or they may wake early, or they may have broken sleep. Um, the other issues that women talk about is brain fog, cognitive issues like memory loss, losing words, lack of focus, concentration as well. So there's a whole lot in that whole area. And, women can be prone to depression. And if women have had a previous instance of mental health issues, they can recur because they're triggered by the hormones. So, and women say to us, gosh, I think I'm going mad. And they genuinely feel that they're going mad because of this, anxiety, which can often be new. And oftentimes, depending on the knowledge and the experience of their GP or their gynecologist, they may be given antidepressants, which reinforces that they think they're going mad. On the physiological symptoms, obviously the hot flushes, night sweats are kind of famous. Period changes can be a big thing. In particular, if periods become heavier, and it could be a thing called flooding, which means that women sometimes can hardly leave the house, or they're, fearful of getting up from a chair in a meeting because of any accident or staining that they may leave behind. One woman told us that she sat in a board meeting for 8 hours. She didn't go on the toilet breaks, the lunch breaks, or whatever it is, the smoke breaks or whatever, because she was so terrified of what would be left on the seat behind her. So she waited till everyone left the meeting room. That's all very treatable nowadays. Years ago, they would have whipped out women's wombs, and women would have had a hysterectomy, and that would have also brought on kind of menopause. But nowadays, there's a lot more treatments available. There's things like dry eye. I suffered with that, didn't know it was a thing. Headaches, I went for a brain scan. It was all clear, thankfully. I then developed focal migraine, dizziness, vertigo, fatigue. Women can also suffer with things like sinus and asthma can happen. And in addition to that, women can have skin changes, weight gain. I put on about 10 pounds. So there's quite a lot of different symptoms there. And then when you go to the genitourinary, another thing I suffered with was urinary tract infections. Throughout my 40s, I was on antibiotics permanently. Bladder issues, women can get bladder leaks when they laugh, cough, or sneeze, or say getting up to go to the loo in the night, that kind of thing. And vaginal dryness is a big thing. And women won't often volunteer these things because they don't really associate it with menopause. So we have an app as well that you can download from the Google Play Store and from the Apple Store, and you can track your symptoms on that and see the different symptoms. But women will, suffer from painful sex and things like that, and they might be a bit embarrassed to raise that with their doctor. But because we have this on, as part of their pre-screening check-in before they come and see the doctor, it prompts them to think, oh yes, maybe I might have that. So such a range. Some women suffer them all, and others only suffer one or two of those buckets. But no woman is the same, and no woman's menopause is the same.
Oh, thank you, Loretta. And exactly as you say, there is a humongous range of symptoms there. I just wanted to say, for the people who put questions into the Q&A, that's fantastic. We will have time. I'm going to ask questions for about 25 minutes, and then we will come to the Q&A. So just to be aware of that. So Denise, we've heard that raft of symptoms, and particularly, I mean, the symptoms that you explained, Loretta, about the flooding and that feeling of not wanting to get up from a chair, and what that means if you're in a business meeting or in a board meeting. Denise, I guess with two hats on there, a HR hat on how we can support women in the workplace who are going through this, and secondly, whether you want to share anything from a personal perspective about, supporting yourself or friends and colleagues around you.
Yeah, no, sure. So how have I managed this? I suppose personally, I've done a lot of academic and a lot of practical research, and really I think alcohol and chocolate are the answer, ideally together. No, sorry, I had to try and lift it there because those symptoms are so
shocking, absolutely shocking.
Absolutely. No, on a serious note, I suppose I'm happy to share. For me personally, I suppose I started about 6 years ago, very much with the heat and anxiety, suddenly feeling why am I really nervous about this, and my role previously and even now would be a lot of frontline delivery. So you're always a bit nervous when you're going up onto a stage, but I noticed it really dialed up, and I was going, okay, why is this happening, and all the wonderful associated physiological symptoms that you get of tightness of chest, etc. I did try the alternatives first, and I think we'll talk about a few of them later. They didn't work. They just didn't work for me. And actually some of them had quite disturbing side effects for me. So, and
when you say alternatives, Denise, you meant non-medical?
Non-medical, yeah.
Therapies, okay.
Yeah, black cohosh and stuff. But I mean, I can mention that later, because I think you'll talk about that. So I did then just go to my GP, and I'm on HRT, a low dose, because I would have been susceptible to migraines a bit. And it really did make a difference, made a difference on mood, on temperature, heat piece, and I'm still on it and will continue to be on it. There's lots of research, and I have two medics in the family that sort of saying, oh, 5 or 6 years, but then speaking to Andrea and another GP, they're saying they have women on their 70s and 80s on HRT, so that's cheered me up. I think one thing, just you can feel out of control. Some of the symptoms really make you feel out of control. And as someone who, like Loretta, feels you're on top of your game and your life and you're organized, that's one of the worst feelings. And therefore, I think the sooner you sort of can go and explore, I need some interventions here, I need something to help me, that has really helped. And I do quite a bit of coaching, and quite often with women, senior women, because our ultimate irony is when we get to our 50s and we maybe have more time to really go for the senior roles, we get the joy of the menopause hitting us at the same time. And I think although I professionally coach them, often it comes to the table, this issue that they're currently, and having that support system in place, having a policy in an organization that gives permission to talk about it and talk about interventions is really important. So, I mean, I could say lots more, but I'm conscious I'll probably weave in some more things we're doing from a policy perspective and follow-on questions.
All right, thank you, Denise. I think I might just jump into HRT then, just to kind of round out that discussion with you bringing it up. Andrea, could you explain to us what HRT is and the pros and cons? And I think also really mindful too, HRT isn't for everyone, is it? So there are some people who can't have it for medical reasons. So perhaps if you could touch on whether there are other prescribed alternatives to HRT.
Yes, that's a big question, Lorraine.
I know, sorry, and answer that in 3 minutes.
I know. I suppose just to caveat, I'm always very careful not to be too prescriptive about HRT because I'm a firm believer that it's really about taking an individualized approach. It's about looking at the woman in front of you, seeing what are her symptoms, what's important to her going forwards, what's her own personal medical history, and what's her family history. And it's really a personalized discussion then for that woman about what are the benefits of HRT for her and what are the risks, and what are the best options there. So just I suppose to give a broad view of it, really what we're talking about is replacing the hormones that naturally decline at menopause. So essentially all women that go on to HRT will be given estrogen, and that can either be in the form of tablets, patches, gel, or spray, or very occasionally implants. And then that's really going to help relieve that whole host of symptoms that Loretta outlined very well. And then alongside that, if women have their womb, they need to take progesterone to help keep the lining of the womb thin and to balance that estrogen. And that again needs to be looked at in terms of dose and type that's going to suit that woman. And then some women will also take testosterone therapy. It can be added alongside estrogen and progesterone. Not everybody needs it, or not everybody gets benefit from it, because whilst estrogen and progesterone fall very rapidly at menopause, testosterone is a slower decline from our sort of mid-30s onwards. And some testosterone is also produced in our adrenal glands, so it declines more slowly than estrogen at menopause. But definitely there's a role for it, and it can certainly help some women, in particular with libido and possibly also energy levels and the brain fog symptoms and urogenital health.
Okay.
I suppose, again, just to outline a wee bit of the benefits, again, it's going to come back very much to the woman in front of you, so HRT, I suppose the key benefit is it's about quality of life. If you don't have any symptoms of menopause, you don't have to take HRT. I think there's, again, sometimes women end up feeling like they're missing out if they don't take it. But it's really, the advice is that if you have symptoms that are affecting your quality of life, or perhaps you have a particular health issue that would benefit from HRT, or a history like osteoporosis in your family, then you would think about it. But primarily you'd be looking at relieving symptoms. But HRT is very beneficial for your bone health. We quite rapidly start to lose bone mass at menopause, and HRT will help slow that down and improve it. HRT, when you start it before the age of 60 or within 10 years of your last period, there's a benefit for heart health that is very well proven now at this stage. It can help, lipid profiles. It can help reduce that insulin resistance that can develop at menopause. Also those range of cognitive symptoms that Loretta alluded to, they can be very real. And I think they're some of the symptoms that affect women, an awful lot in terms of mood and cognition. So HRT can certainly help with that. And then also with the genitourinary symptoms and sort of, sexual function and low libido, it can be very helpful with that.
Okay.
In terms of, do you want me to talk a wee bit about the risks and the alternatives?
Yeah, I think so. And I'm particularly mindful there's people listening today for whom HRT isn't an option. And it does, when
Yes.
so many of the benefits make it sound like the kind of the panacea. So
exactly, that is very true. So there will be some women who, because of their medical history or their family history, that HRT, the risks will outweigh the benefits. And for example, if a woman has had a history of a hormone-dependent cancer, or maybe if they've been, got a genetic increased risk of breast cancer, for example, BRCA gene, you'll be looking at that woman in terms of whether she takes HRT and how long for, and at what age. But most women can take it, but there will be a small number of women that can't take it, or that certainly don't want to take it. And it's not a case that everyone needs it. And it's really important that those women don't feel, left out and forgotten about. I suppose HRT is the best way of managing all of the symptoms, but there are prescribable non-hormonal alternatives to HRT, which we can use to target the most troublesome symptoms. For example, there's medications like gabapentin or oxybutynin that we can use to try and help with the flushes and sweats. And, there's a range of other options there. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention about is cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, for menopause. that is a psychological technique which we have a lot of good evidence for now that it can be very effective. And that can help with those vasomotor symptoms, but also with the sleep disturbance, brain fog, and cognitive and mood changes at menopause. It can either be something that women get delivered to them in with a psychologist or a practitioner who's trained in CBT for menopause, or there is some online self-directed programs and reading. And then of course lifestyle approaches. I know some of the other panel members are going to allude a bit more about that, but there is a role for HRT, but really your lifestyle is the cornerstone of your health going forward, whether you take HRT or whether you don't.
Okay, thank you. And it sounds like that the point you're making is it is very individual, and we'd be suggesting that people talk to their GPs or the health
Absolutely.
professionals.
Talk to your GP. Most practices, it can be hard for women to access care. Most practices have somebody, I would hope at this stage, that has some training in women's health. But if you live in Northern Ireland and you are struggling with menopause symptoms or to get the right HRT, you can ask your GP for a referral. So I work in a GPEX gynecology service in the NHS, and there's centres in all trust areas across Northern Ireland, and also each of the trust areas has a hospital menopause clinic. So if you're struggling with care, do ask for a referral.
Thanks, Andrea. And also, obviously, we can access the Menopause Hub too online, which is super. Loretta, could you come in now and just talk to us about diet and exercise and the importance of that and the role that plays? You know, Andrea said it's the cornerstone of our health, actually. So how have you seen it being helpful for women experiencing these symptoms?
If I take my own personal story then and talk about other women as well, is that like I tried everything natural under the sun, and I know other people have as well. And I bought a magnet that you put in your underwear, and it was supposed to help my.
So tell us a magnet that you put in your underwear. Is it a U-shaped magnet?
It's a little kind of a teardrop magnet, and it's beautiful and it's purple. And you put it under your belly button in your underwear, and it's supposed to help with hot flushes. And I bought it for €35 in Boots. And I was convinced this was, I was terrified of HRT based on no information, I might add, but some scary headlines in my head. But anyway, I put the magnet in, and it didn't help with my hot flushes. The only thing that happened was when I went into the supermarket, the wire basket went whoom and stuck to me, and then the chain for the trolley whoom. And I'd be like looking around, did anyone see that? So I would say to you, beware of, there's so many people have hopped on the bandwagon now because menopause and perimenopause is a very trendy topic. Who'd have thought? So I would just say beware of some of the things that are out there. I did try to introduce diet and lifestyle measures, but they didn't really initially help with my symptoms. So then I went on hormone replacement therapy that you've just described, and I take testosterone and I love it and it loves me. And I then got back to my old self. But what that does, so what we often see with women is that because of their symptoms, they're absolutely fatigued. Their motivation, their mojo. I lost my mojo. I would describe it as my mojo or my vavavoom. So they've lost their mojo, their motivation, their vavavoom. They're spinning an awful lot of plates with family, elderly parents, children, work, life, home, and all that sort of thing. And all the while trying to look Instagram perfect. And so as a result, maybe the exercise and the diet and lifestyle stuff kind of goes out the window. And they may resort to sitting down in the evening, flopping on the sofa, watching some TV, maybe having a glass of wine to hopefully alleviate some of the symptoms, or, eating food that probably isn't the best. And as a result, a lot of things kind of go out the window. And what we found with women is that once they get maybe their symptoms under control, whether it's through HRT or other methods, they can then get the energy back to kind of look at their diet and lifestyle. And yes, having your weight under control is so important, because having a BMI of over 30 more than doubles your risk of breast cancer. And so women don't think that. Women think, oh, HRT will cause breast cancer, whereas actually being overweight or obese, as I said, with a BMI of over 30. Smoking isn't good, because women who smoke are experience worse symptoms and experience menopause and perimenopause earlier. So alcohol consumption, that can increase your risk of breast cancer if you drink 2 or more units a day. So you can see that actually you're putting yourself at risk of a lot more things by not looking after your diet and your lifestyle
Yes.
and your weight.
Yeah, it is a
And it's
cornerstone, isn't it?
yeah, and it's also things like because the decline in estrogen results in, our bones being at risk through osteoporosis, osteopenia, or bone density, our heart becomes at risk. And in putting these interventions in place now will help us for the next 1/3 to 1/2 of our lives,
Yeah.
because we're going to be living into our 80s and we want to live in the best health. So I would say looking after your diet and lifestyle is really, really important. And then other measures you can add in, whether it's CBT, whether it's complementary therapy, whether it's hormone replacement therapy, and then you can start to kind of have a holistic approach to your health and well-being. And I cannot emphasize how much the diet and lifestyle is important.
Thank you. Thanks, Loretta. So Denise, coming to you now. Loretta talked about those kind of feelings of that lead to lack of self-esteem. I think when you're having all those symptoms, you can start just losing your confidence and really lacking your mojo. I think you said Loretta, losing your mojo. Denise, could you talk about that and how women can keep a positive sense of self, a positive self-esteem, positive body image in this stage, and any general thoughts or tips you have on that?
Yeah, no, happy to, and I can sort of combine, I suppose, my own thinking and also what I've heard from talking to women. And I suppose to me, there's a bit of reframing and redefining. We know, and we've talked this morning about a lot of the very difficult symptoms, but there is a bit of a reframing of, I do remember the release from the monthly periods, remembering when you were trying to remember when was it due, to know kind of wear my white jeans, or trying to coordinate with going on holidays or social events or work events. So there's sort of a release from that in a sense. I know we've got another set of symptoms, but there is a bit of a release from that. And it is about sort of redefining what beauty and self-worth is. I think sadly now it's about owning it. And, there's such pressure on women now, and I've still trying to stay off Instagram, which I know can be a great platform, but also that comparator culture. You're constantly hit with women who maybe are the same age have far more resources and time to be the best version of themselves going through menopause. So I do think be mindful of that. What are you filling your head with? And, whether it's social media is a bit like food, junk in, junk out, so what are you doing in that regard? And the whole thing about focusing on health, not appearance. And absolutely, listen, I so need to, I'm going to say this, and it's the classic, you say it and you don't do it, but the core strength, and that's sort of, I have full intention in November when I like for walking. I find the whole walking and being outside in nature really helps me. But once the winter comes in, I'm going to do and committed, and I'll say it publicly here, to that, because 2 of my friends are doing it, are going through menopause, and that if you feel strong physically, you'll feel strong mentally. So I think there is piece about that, and also looking to older women who embody that confidence and grace, during and after menopause, because that helps. Surround yourself with the people. I think having a support group of people who are going through it is fantastic, because you sort of, it is, difficult to talk about some of this stuff. So it's great to be able to be open in that. And then the weight piece as well is, listen, and a GP, talk about the menopause, that how you can, suddenly this half stone has appeared, even though you don't feel you're eating to justify it. And I think Andrea might talk about that. And it's sort of, work hard, but things in moderation. You don't want to spend your life where you go, I can never have that glass of wine, or I can never have that piece of carrot cake. But I think there is a moderation piece, definitely. So I think that bit about beauty is not limited to youth or body type, and look at all you've achieved, look at who you are now and what you've done, and sort of the real positive contribution you can still make, and surround yourself with those people who sort of endorse that.
And I think what you actually did as well, Denise, in a lovely way, was modelled accountability. How when we make ourselves accountable in terms of exercise or something we want to achieve in our life, and we say it out loud, the webinar in front of millions of people, then that will allow us to do it. But I think that we can all do that with our friendship groups. And also you talked about having people around you who you can exercise with, for instance, that's a really nice, easy, practical tool.
Yeah.
We've had loads of questions in, and I really want to find time for those. And I think some of the questions that we've had, we've been able to cover. We've talked about osteoporosis and heart disease and links with that, and we've also talked about libido as well. So I'm going to come on to these questions because we've got some really great questions here. So there's a question, and Andrea, you might be best to answer this. The first two, certainly. So are bloods important before being prescribed HRT? I've been to the GP and private specialist who both gave me different meds without any tests. So that sounds, I think the audience member asking that question is surprised there wasn't any tests done.
Okay, so again, it's about kind of looking at the woman in front of you, like, you know, why are you doing the bloods and what bloods does she need? So typically if the woman's over 45 and she's having symptoms of menopause, it's menopause. And, you know, we don't have to have a hormone profile done to confirm that. Because what can happen, you know, during perimenopause in particular, is that your hormone levels are fluctuating very widely. You have times in the month when the estrogen levels are very high, and then you've times when the levels are very low, I suppose typically in the 1 to 2 weeks before the period. And women can start to notice that in that week or so before the period that they start to get symptoms like hot flushes and sleep disturbance. So I do see women from time to time who maybe they've had a hormone profile checked and the GP or other health professional says to them, oh no, you're not menopausal, you're not in perimenopause, your bloods are fine. And that's really confusing for women.
Yes.
So I suppose in that situation, it's not helpful to do the bloods. We'd be guided by the symptoms. The other thing to remember is that there's no direct correlation between a blood level and what a woman will experience. And we don't really understand why that is. It always comes to my mind as a lady whose bloods were, I suppose we'll say in inverted commas, terrible, in that her estrogen levels were really, really low, and follicle stimulating hormone, which is made in the brain, was very high. And she was a younger woman, actually. She'd gone through early menopause and she had no symptoms. And yet you can have women, you know, their estrogen levels are reasonable and they will have a lot of symptoms. So in those women, no, it's not helpful. But where it is helpful is if the woman is younger. I suppose we use an arbitrary figure of 45, but sort of if they're below the average age of menopause and they're experiencing those symptoms, then we may want to check a hormone profile, but you don't necessarily titrate the dose of your estrogen to the blood level that you get back. The other thing I think is very important for bloods is I always say to women, try and know your numbers, try and know what is your cholesterol, what's your blood sugar like, are there any issues with insulin resistance? You know, have you high cholesterol? Because your lipid profile can change a lot at menopause. And it's a time really for looking at your overall health and taking a preventative approach as you move forward. And the other time I suppose we would tend to do bloods is if a woman is thinking about starting testosterone therapy. So we would check a blood level at baseline before they would start any treatment, because, for example, sometimes women can have conditions like polycystic ovaries where they will naturally have a higher testosterone level. And if you added in more testosterone, they would get side effects. So you would normally check a blood level before you would start testosterone therapy, and then after 3 months of treatment, and then you'd repeat it once a year while they continue on treatment.
Okay, thank you for that. And that's a really an in-depth response there. And I think there's just a real key message here about having that individualized input. And I think that can't be underestimated. And I think some of the questions people have put in would suggest that the need another conversation with the GP. We'll ask this question, but Andrea, it might be that we recognise that individuals will probably need to speak to the GPs to get a full answer. But there's a lady here, she's in perimenopause. She's on HRT, she said in her late 30s. She had the IUD in a patch, and before that she was on Yasmin. She's in pain. She said it's been 4 weeks. Her gynae has asked her to wait another 2 weeks. But what should she do? Should she go back to her GP?
Yeah, so I think at that stage, you know, I wouldn't be expecting you to have pain at that stage. You know, sometimes you can have crampy period type pains, you know, the day or two after you get a Mirena coil fitted. It would be important to rule out any infection and also perhaps a scan to check the position of the coil, that it's not low lying, and get the coil threads checked. I do find sometimes that in women with a history of endometriosis or adenomyosis, which is a condition where the lining of the womb grows into the wall of the womb, sometimes those women can experience some pain with post-coil insertion that continues on. Sometimes it will settle, within the first couple of months, but I think it's really a decision for that woman whether, they feel, is it that it's a little bit uncomfortable now and again, especially when they have a period, and they can take some paracetamol and that eases it. But certainly if you have a lot of discomfort, no, that would be an indication for removing the coil again.
Sure, thank you. A question now for Denise. So I'm going to roll two questions into one. One is around the workplace measures that you recommend, and linked to that is what proportion of women are changing job or going part-time or giving up work as a result of menopause or taking early retirement. So I guess the stat that we have seen within Women in Business from a survey done by the BBC last year was 23% of a group of 2,000 women were thinking about leaving the workforce. So yeah, what do you think can be done, Denise? And then Loretta, I might come to you, because a lot of people on the call today may be self-employed too and might not have the luxury of workplace policies. So Denise, if you can think about it perhaps from that HR perspective first.
Yeah, so it's from and the percentages, and there's been quite a few reports done on the percentage of women leaving, which is an absolute complete shame, as understates it, because if you think of women at this stage in their life, they have so much career and lived experience to give back, that they feel at this stage that they are having to leave. And it goes back to my point about looking at what does your organization how does it recognize this? And in the last organization I was in, I brought a menopause policy in, and it was a public sector, environment where that wouldn't have necessarily been as explicitly said before, but it was really important to me in getting, when I launched it, not getting the middle-aged female HR director to launch it, but that there was complete buy-in from the senior team that this is an issue that affects not just women, but it is also, never mind if it's your colleague, it's your wife, it's your aunt, it's your sister, it's your daughter, at some stages as well. So I think the positioning of it, if you get the buy-in and the importance of emphasizing the loss of talent and expertise, if you don't have something in place to do this, is the first thing. And then when you do launch it, that you make sure it is. So I asked for another member of our senior team to launch it with me. So it was a joint launch, that this is something that we know affects everyone. And then tactically too, because there has been so much talk about menopause, and we know World Menopause Day is the 18th of October, so there'll continue to be a lot of focus, rightly, but you can hear people saying, oh God, not another thing about menopause. Is that, I think, something that tactically worked very well, and that when we launched it in the organization that week, we were very mindful that, it's not just all about women. Men don't go through menopause. I've heard the term menopause, but Andrea can confirm or deny that may just be a jokey term. But equally, men over 50 from the PSA, prostate, higher risk, and younger men with the rate testicular cancer going up. We did a men's health awareness, in the weeks following the launch, so that there is that equity, which there should be, that where women go through this, equally men have different issues, 50 plus or younger, that we need to look at. So I think that's very important, to position it right and create forums for women to be openly able to discuss it, so that you can say in an organization and through the policy, what are the things that would help from the point of view of ventilation, where they're sitting, flexible working, and being safe and comfortable to say, listen, I'm just having a bad couple of hours here, either to work in a different place and that sort of thing. So
thank you. So clear message there about having a menopause policy, making sure there's buy-in at an executive level, and that it isn't just something that's seen as a women's issue.
Yes,
it's an organizational issue. It impacts your bottom line. And I think what we can also say is that there are really good examples of best practice out there. So if there's any organizations online who don't have a menopause policy, certainly get in touch, and we can put you in touch with other organizations that do have them and that you can share and learn from. Loretta, I wonder if you could come in thinking about the people online who are business owners, and for whom they haven't got the benefit of a HR policy and a HR director and all of that, and they've just got to get on with running their own business, unfortunately. So yeah, what would you say to those women?
So just before I get to that, I just wanted to build a little bit on Denise's point.
Yeah,
We actually work with a huge number of organisations, and menopause policy is one area you can make the changes in. And then secondly, it's about senior leader engagement, but it's about also managers being able to have that conversation and not feel awkward,
sure.
so they can feel comfortable and confident, as well as HR. It's also about knowing the business case, which is, improved productivity, decrease in absenteeism, talent retention,
Mhm.
and also talent attraction. But it's also about the legislative risk. And there's been a huge number of cases in the UK where menopausal women have taken cases and won on the grounds of age, gender, and disability discrimination. So I think employers need to be mindful of that. Um, and at the end of the day, it makes good business sense from diversity and inclusion and from an employee well-being perspective. And we work with like the Irish Civil Service to input their to create their policy and roll out training and so on. And would you believe today we actually are judging the Menopause Workplace Excellence Awards for 2024. And so in another room beside me, they're all judging the entries that we have in here, and we have
Brilliant.
small to large organizations. And that piece around engaging males is really important. And we actually have launched for the first time our Male Allyship Awards. So we've male allies being awarded this year. But and then we've actually gone out and we've got a survey going, and we'll share it afterwards, where we're interested in men's opinion about menopause and their attitudes and beliefs, so that we can start to have those conversations. So you can see it's really, really important. And we also have an accreditation program for organizations where they can become menopause accredited for their workplaces. But if I go to they're the big companies and then go down to sort of the self-employed. I think if you're in a small organization, I think if you're personally experiencing menopause, I think it's really beholden on you to actually seek help. Because if you want to do your job and continue to run that organization as the entrepreneur, that you need to be in the best health that you can be. So I would encourage anybody who is experiencing symptoms to seek help. And you can see there's a whole range of help options available, and it doesn't have to be only HRT. And the second thing I'd say is that, some of the organizations we work with, like Bank of Ireland and Allied Irish Bank, they've introduced 10 days menopause leave for their staff. No organization that's small can afford that. I have a small organization. So I think the key thing here is that what women tell us is that the stress and the anxiety around coming to work, around trying to hide their symptoms, trying not to be ridiculed, trying to, make sure that it doesn't impact on their role, making sure that it doesn't impact on their career, means that that's an added layer of anxiety and stress that they have coming to work. So the mere fact of saying, we're happy to have that conversation should you need it, we're happy to try and work with you to put in place any reasonable accommodations or adjustments. The very fact that you're able to do that actually alleviates a lot of that pressure for women. And that in itself is a relief. But I think if a small organization, the best you can do is to, where possible, introduce any flexibility that you can. So if it's possible for the person to work from home more, or to, do the hybrid piece, or to, when they're on calls, maybe not put a camera on if they're not feeling up to it that day, maybe to allow them more flexibility in their hours, so that, maybe they might start later because they've had a bad night's sleep, but they might finish later, or that they can work up extra hours to cover off. And I think it's really about being as flexible as you can. But at the end of the day, you do have to run your business. And you can't afford a lot of things that bigger organizations can afford. You can also signpost your staff to various different resources, and they're free resources, they're online resources, and so on, that you can actually point them there so that they can go and seek additional help. And I think really it's about having an open door policy and trying to work with the individual to try and see what can be put in place to help them. But I don't think it's a thing that only big organizations can own. I do think that smaller organizations can be compassionate and empathetic. And at the end of the day, I know that staff that work on our team, if you're willing to support them, you'll get it back,
Yeah.
in a hundredfold, really. So I think it's about that sort of give and take, but it doesn't have to cost the earth.
No, thanks so much for that, Loretta. And what we will do after this, when we share the link, we'll also share resources. I'll ask the panel to suggest some resources that we can share with individuals. But a question for you, Andrea. So this lady has said that she's had no periods for a year. Is she in menopause or post-menopausal? The symptoms are in decline, which is great, but she's on HRT. Does she need to consider reducing or stopping the HRT?
Yes, so she didn't mention what age she is in that.
No, she doesn't mention. No.
So it's hard to know from that. Is it that the periods have stopped because the medication it's taking, or, you know, sometimes we don't have the marker of the last period. So whilst we have that definition 1 year after the last period, for example, you might have a woman who is on a contraceptive pill or a coil in that she's not having that regular period. So I suppose if she's a year after her last period, you'd be making sure that she's on a continuous HRT regime where she takes estrogen and progesterone continuously. In terms of, you know, I often get asked how long should I stay on HRT? I suppose that's essentially the question. And there's no hard and fast rules. So the British Menopause Society put out a statement last year saying that really each year you should have a review with your prescriber, ideally your GP or another healthcare professional in your practice. And I do appreciate this can be hard accessing care. And at that review,
that question has come up a few times.
Has come up as well.
Yeah.
So at that review, I suppose it's looking at what are the benefits, what are the risks? Is this the right type of HRT? Is it suiting? Are there any side effects? Is it, you know, it can be quite challenging sometimes when your HRT regime gets a bit more complicated. You're putting on gels and maybe using pessaries vaginally, and it's trying to see what works for the woman that they can remember to take. So really reviewing it, and there's no hard and fast rules about when they stop taking it. If it is helping the symptoms, if they're feeling good and the symptoms are well managed, there are women that decide that they're going to stay on it in the longer term. But equally, sometimes women will decide after maybe, you know, a couple of years of use that they want to try coming off their HRT, which again is entirely reasonable. And at that stage, I suppose you would gradually reduce down the dose of HRT, and I suppose you can maybe wean off it. And life at that point perhaps is at a different stage, you know, that, you know, maybe when things have sort of calmed down a bit, as some of the other panelists were saying. I think the hardest thing is this comes along when you're, you know, very busy in your career and at home, and all of a sudden you feel potentially really, really bad.
Thank you. Well, that lady is 55 and she's not on the coil or the pill, and it sounds like that's a decision that she could take herself.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's lovely. Thank you. We've got somebody who's making the point about I guess exercise and Pilates in the workplace, for menopause in the workplace, and she's mentioned about another symptom that we haven't mentioned today, but itchy skin, and that extended into sleep and daily activity. So does someone, it's not something that you often hear about. I have heard about itchy skin too, and I guess we've talked about dry eye, but it does feel, if people have got itchy skin, they wouldn't necessarily think that is anything to do with perimenopause or menopause. Is that something that can be solved by something other than HRT? Loretta, do you want to come in?
Well, I was just going to jump in there and say that, you know, on our symptom checker and on our app, we have, one of the things is dry, itchy or crawling skin. So sometimes people feel that they've something crawling on their skin. And it was interesting, I was at a lunch event the other week, and there was photographs being taken, and this woman said, oh, I need to keep, I want to take my cardigan off for the photographs, but I need to keep it on because my arms are so itchy. And I said to her, and I knew you can look at her and see what age she roughly is, you know. I said to her, tell me more about that. And basically she said since she's become perimenopausal, that this has all happened. And so it's one of the things, I mean, hormone replacement therapy can help with it. But it is one of the symptoms that you, as I said, wouldn't associate with it. So I don't know if there's a non-medical solution or another medical solution to it, Andrea, is there?
I suppose again, there can be a couple of different causes. I suppose you have estrogen receptors all over your body, so your skin changes obviously as well with collagen production declining, but also the dryness. So women talk about, as you mentioned, Loretta, the dry eyes, the dry mouth, the dry vagina, the dry skin. It's like our whole body becomes a bit generally drier.
Right there.
So
Finding.
certainly HRT can help with some of that, but equally sometimes it's about trying to in your diet, making sure you're getting your omega-3 and all your
Yes.
healthy fats in your diet are really, really important. And also maintaining your skin barrier, you know, using moisturizers and products that are, you know, going to be suitable. Certainly skin conditions like rosacea and eczema you can find can flare up. And I suppose I do just want to briefly mention, you know, the vaginal symptoms that we touched on. I think, you know, menopause is no longer taboo because we're all always talking about it, but the whole host of genital and sexual health and, you know, vaginal issues that arise, and sometimes, you know, when I examine women, it's shocking what they've maybe been putting up with for quite a long time. So there's some really good treatments that can help. And again, I would really encourage women to, you know, to talk to their GP regarding that.
Thanks. I'm mindful of the time. I think we could run this for all day actually, and we wouldn't run out of questions or discussion topics. But I do want us to wrap up at 11 as we promised. So I think just to finish off, if I could ask each of you just to share a final word of advice, of motivation for people listening today, just very briefly. Denise, if you could start.
I suppose that it's the whole, for me, it's a big piece about owning it and not feeling, you know, ashamed or whatever to talk about it, to take control, to look at options and have a support group, and if for an organization, you know, push if it's not there to have it, you know, at the table as a discussion point for all the reasons we've said otherwise. And also to try, I think it needs to be a little bit of more positive PR reframing too. You know, I think from the sense of if you do have really bad symptoms and you take ownership and get interventions, it really is great, you know, and you do feel that you've got that confidence of life now of having gone through so much. And if you're feeling a bit better about yourself, you know, where there's nothing stopping us then.
Exactly. Thanks for that, Denise. And Loretta, from yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the first thing is educate yourself. So get information from trusted sources. There's so many myths out there and so confusing. So that'd be the first thing. The second thing I'd say then is you need to advocate for yourself. So, you know, you need to, with your information, advocate for what you want to help you through menopause, whether it's with a medical profession or otherwise. And then what I'd say is once your symptoms are under control, and this is my personal experience, but we see it with women, is that, you know, you really do feel empowered. And I don't miss those monthly cycles of up and down and PMT and all that goes with that. Honestly, it's fantastic to be kind of on an even keel. And then the other thing I'd say is there's another hormone that declines, which we don't talk much about, called oxytocin. And it's our kind of love bomb hormone. And it's the one that makes, you know, we fall in love with our partners and our babies and all that. And that declines as well, which means that we stop putting everybody else first and we start to put ourselves first. And I have to say, but for menopause, I would not be doing what I'm doing now, obviously, but I've launched myself from, and I've completely reinvented myself, I suppose, from a corporate marketing person to an entrepreneur doing something in a field that I love and that I'm passionate about. My children are grown up, they're, as I call them, my kiddos. And I have energy, I have an enthusiasm, I've got the wisdom, and I have the, I don't really give up, if you like. And so that's a really great place to be. And I've got a third to half of my life to go now. And I'm going, what do I want to do? Where's my bucket list? How do I do that? And I want to get in, I want to be in the best health that I can be in to live those days. So I actually think menopause is a wake-up call to look at your health and take a bit of a midlife stock check. And then, you know, decide what you want to do for the rest of your life, because it's your life to live.
It is, and so it sounds like it's the beginning, Loretta, doesn't it, as opposed to the end.
The end.
I love that. You're a fantastic example. Andrea, last pieces of advice.
Yeah, so I suppose I would echo some of that reframing. You know, I think it really is a window of opportunity about looking at where we're at now. There's always solutions, you know, for managing those troublesome symptoms, but how can we keep our bodies as healthy as possible so that, you know, we can do all of those things that are on the bucket list. So definitely, you know, don't put up with bothersome symptoms, say about it, but also really try and future-proof your body. from a health perspective going forward. I do just want to give a little plug at the end for our conference. So I'm involved in the Menopause NI conference. It's on World Menopause Day in the Clayton Hotel in Belfast. I'm very passionate about menopause care and about improving education for women and other health professionals. And I suppose as part of this, we're hoping that women will come, but also that workplaces and employers and organisations will come, and I suppose show their commitment to their female staff and their organisation by, you know, finding out a wee bit more and being able to support their members of staff and retain that talent. So we really hope to see some women in business members there, and please come along and say hello, and I'm happy to have a chat and answer any other queries and questions.
Yeah, thanks,
So
Andrea,
thank
because
you.
that's like we've certainly not been able to answer even half of the questions that have come through today. There have been so many, and we'll share information and a link to that in the follow-up, as well as some other resources. So just drawing to a close this webinar, thanks to our fantastic panel for joining us. Also to those of you who are live online, and to those of you who are catching up. We've got one slide just to share. Women in Business, as you know, we are a member network, and we run events every single month to support you in either starting and growing a business or achieving success in your career, whatever that looks like. So coming up just next week, we have a face-to-face networking event for women on maternity leave, or who are about to go on maternity leave. So if that's somebody you know, somebody you work with, anyone in your circle, please let them know about that. We also have a young women's network aimed at women aged 28 and under, who are meeting at the beginning of October. Our webinar for next month, we're continuing this series about talking about the M word. And next month, we're going to be talking about the menstrual cycle and managing our energy in the menstrual cycle, and what we can do around maximising energy and nutrition and exercise. And then we have a face-to-face networking event in arts coming up too. So lots going on. Check out our website. We hope to see you again at a future event. And thanks again for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.